Hello my friends and welcome back. It's Monday. You know what that means? Let the surviving game begin. You and I, we're gonna survive up until Friday, I promise you that. But you know who didn't survive? Yeah, you're correct. The Russian troops. 1,770 of them in the last 24 hours actually. Maybe some of them will survive, but some of them will never wake up and they're now enriching the Ukrainian soil for the future sunflowers. This is the Russian losses chart of 11th of November, so the last 24 hours, and it is in the top 5 days, in the top 5 24-hour periods of the entire full-scale invasion. That signifies to us, and we're going to look at it later, that Russian losses have skyrocketed, but the results for these losses, yes, they are advancing on the front, but it's very important we look at the losses to square kilometers occupied and the ratio between them. We put it visually in front of our eyes, and then we really see how much the Russians are paying with their manpower for each square kilometers taken. Here you can see 1,770. I mean, it's a massive number. This is not sustainable. It might look like it is, it's not. 40 armored personnel vehicles and 34 artillery systems, 119 vehicles and fuel tanks. Just staggering numbers here. All right, here is the chart I promised you. It's a fantastic chart. It's quite small. I think you can zoom in or pause the video, but let's go through it one by one because it's beautiful. 2022, the war started. We remember the massive convoy that was going to take Kyiv, the nuclear convoy, which was like 20 kilometers long and 3 rows of trucks right behind each other. Even at those days, with the Bayraktar circling above and destroying men down below, still Russia lost only 200 per 24 hours. Only 200. Then we go to 2023 and it was 500 to 1,000, and now we're at 2024 and we're at 1,500. What's weird about this is that the Russians gained the most territory the fastest at the beginning months or the beginning year of war, and the losses were the smallest. Now that the losses are the biggest, the gains are the smallest. It's strange, it's counterproductive. What are they really gaining for these massive losses? The gray area right here signifies the ground the Russians control from Ukraine. As you can see, this line ever since the fall of 2022, the beginning of 2023, up until now it is completely stable. Yes, Russians are gaining ground very slowly, but people tend to look at minor changes on the battlefield. If you look at the size of Ukraine, even the size of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia oblasts, these numbers, these 10 square kilometers, they get lost. It's such a vast country. And this chart represents it here beautifully. 10 casualties per square kilometers. And here is a comparison between past wars, and this is the best part. World War II, 0.7 casualties per square kilometers, just because the war was fought in all over the world. And we see other wars, Soviet-Afghan War, 0.1 casualty per square kilometers. Vietnam War, 6.1 casualties. Russia-Ukrainian War, 10.5 casualties per square kilometers. This war right now that Russia is waging is one of the most losses-heavy wars in the world per territory occupied. That is a crazy statistics. I used to have a bulky wallet that took up all of my pocket space. It's not the case anymore. Yes, this is a sponsored segment, but I have a story with it. Exter was one of the very first sponsorships I ever did on my channel. I remember back in 2020, they sent me their golden wallet and I have been using it for 4 years now. It has held up unbelievably well, and I was actually a bit sad when they did not order another sponsorship. Until now, 4 years later. Among other extra wallets, they sent me this Parliament wallet, and I immediately began to use it. It has even more space than my old trusty golden Exter. Parliament wallet holds up to 12 cards plus cash and has an extra pocket. It blocks wireless theft and comes in 6 colors. They also send me this Finder card, and I never seen anything like it before. It is a revolution in item tracking. Finder Card is an ultra-slim, rechargeable tracking device that will make your belongings impossible to lose. It's credit card sized and trackable globally with Apple Find My app. Just use your phone to ring your stuff. Yeah, this one makes a sound if you want it to. Or see where you last had it on the map. Grab your Extra wallet now for Extra's Black Friday sale with discounts up to 50% off. Use my code Artur at the checkout to enjoy further savings. Extra link is in the description below. Thank you, Extra, for again sponsoring this channel. Yesterday, my friends, it was the weekend. It was Sunday and I was resting. But in Russia, well, it was difficult to rest because it was the biggest drone attack against Russia by Ukraine in the all full-scale invasion. Over 100 Ukrainian drones struck targets inside Russia. I mean, here is just one video of one civilian filming with his phone, and he already... How many of them are there? Again over us, there. And look, you can see the drone coming in, there. Damn. I've seen these drones, I mean, even 1 year ago when they struck the Medovo airport in Moscow for the first time, it was the same drone. Look at it. You can recognize it. Almost looks like a Bayraktar. Not exactly, but almost. This is a Ukrainian drone. This is the 11th. And this 11 is only in one certain area. Now, what did they... the drone struck different targets, but a certain target was in Moscow. Temporary restrictions have been imposed on operations at Domodedovo and Chukovsky airports. The airports are temporarily not accepting or dispatching flights. But another location was struck very successfully because we got the fireworks and these apocalyptic photos. I would say this is Photoshop, but knowing this is Russia, it's not Photoshop, it just looks cool as hell. This morning, the Russian 1060th support center in Bryansk was struck by Ukrainian UAVs. Locals report of 8 explosions with at least 2 major fires raging. The Russian military facility is at northwestern end of the Bryansk, around 105 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. The Ukrainian campaign to destroy Russian logistics centers continues to be a painful thorn for Moscow. The Bryansk region was targeted for the second time by this kind of attack. Early October, the 67th Grau arsenal in Karachev was struck. Yeah, and support center, aka a logistics center, a military logistics center. They hold their food, ammunition, trucks, PMPs, tanks, everything that's connected to the military on the front. So attacking this is attacking the capability of the Russian offensives anywhere, because they need all of that stuff for the offensives to grind on. And as you can see, there are plenty of videos, civilians filming it from many different angles. There's no shortage of these videos, and all of the links are in the description. You can go and check them out yourself. And the drones are clearly visible in the sky. Now, my friends, we'll take a look at relations between Trump, Putin, Russia, United States, and how it ties in, I mean, Trump's future presidency, how it ties into the upcoming peace he promised to make with Russia and Ukraine. Let's see the options, let's see what Russia might accept, what they might not accept, and what's the outcome. And it tends to be different than what people think or project. We'll start with Trump's demilitarization zone in Ukraine. I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen, just the people close to him have been hinting about his plan to offer to Putin a deal. That Putin keeps the ground he has occupied in Ukraine, and there will be a demilitarized zone in Ukraine. And Ukraine will not join NATO for the next 20 years, but the West will arm Ukraine to make sure Russia doesn't take anything extra from Ukraine. Now, here is analysis from Dendar from X that says that this doesn't work. I don't also think it's going to work, but let's see it. There has been a proposal by the future Trump administration which considers the creation of a demilitarized zone between Ukraine and Russian forces along the line of the contact and patrolled by European armies. We're talking about 1,800 kilometers, and this does not even include Belarus. There have been already voices who call this not feasible, and this is correct. The line of contact is way too long, and Europe must field more troops than it efficiently has to cover that all. Yet, this proposal, if genuine, offers a great opportunity for Ukraine because it includes something far more interesting. And I think people have their fears and their ideas inside their head about Trump's presidency. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what he's going to do. People say he's going to do this, he's going to do that. Nobody knows. Trump is unpredictable. Putin is unpredictable. These two guys, they might do whatever. Nobody knows. And making decisions now based on fears of what might happen is the stupidest thing ever. We have to wait and see for Trump's action before we can even have an idea of what's his agenda behind this. Why I'm telling you this is I would love for people to let go of their fears and base their opinions on reality. Reality is based on actions. We have not yet seen Trump's actions because he's not yet president. So we just have to go through time and wait. We don't know anything yet. This is all a hypothesis. The demilitarized zone plan is not feasible, not primarily because of the buffer zone, but because of the biggest obstacle, which is Russia. Russia has started the war because it wanted to prevent Ukraine from being part of NATO. With European armies, most of them NATO members, moving inside 80% of Ukraine, this would effectively mean that Ukraine is part of NATO. Not in 20 years, but right now from the start. Russia couldn't wage war in Ukraine anymore without waging war against European armies, and by extension NATO. This is where we want to move, and which Putin will fight tooth and nail against. Trump's demilitarization zone idea involves European armies patrolling Ukraine, but Russia keeping what they own now. But this would mean that if Russia chooses to escalate the war and continue the war, there would be European armies in Ukraine, and this would be an open war against NATO armies, which would mean, Ukraine would not officially join NATO, but NATO armies in Ukraine would suffer bringing NATO into the war. So this deal, if Trump's administration members are correct, Putin would reject this outright. This means Putin would say no to Trump's deal, and Trump don't like that. Reflecting that Russia didn't achieve even one strategic goal since the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, having NATO armies along the border Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod, plus Ukrainian regions which Russia considers Russian, would be icing of the cake. If Moscow would agree to this, Putin's signature would allow the very thing happening he was trying to prevent, making all the huge sacrifices Russia had made in vain. This huge failure couldn't be overlooked even in Russia's tightly controlled information space. It would be nothing short of an epic failure and defeat. So this specific deal, if Russia refuses it, then they refuse Trump's deal. They refuse Trump's try to make peace. And Trump doesn't take that lightly. Whatever he is, he has a big ego, he's a deal maker. He doesn't like his deals being refused. So that's bad for Putin if he refuses it. If he accepts this, it's as bad for Putin because then there will be demilitarized zone. It's bad for Ukraine because they have to cede territory. But then there are European armies, European boots on the ground, NATO forces in Ukraine, which is exactly that Putin started this war to prevent from happening. He's going to sign it into reality then. Both options are really bad if this deal is going to be presented. And then again, we don't know. This is just one of the possibilities. Now, my friends, I'll read you another thread which involves balancing of the powers of Russia, China, and the United States. Trump being elected. People in the opposition of Trump definitely might say that this is now playing exactly into Putin's hands. But again, it might not be that black and white. Trump is not a fan of China, quite the opposite. Well, Russia is a puppet of China is going to be, China is going to buy Russia. They're owning Russia. By the fear of those people that now Trump is playing into the hands of Russia, Putin and Trump supposed to be friends now, or Trump getting elected brings a very unpleasant dilemma to the Kremlin. In fact, this would have still existed under the Democrats, but in a delayed form. But now it will have to be resolved quite quickly, which the Kremlin really doesn't like, simply because it doesn't know how to deal with that. The destruction of balances, which was undertaken in 2022, counting on a successful blitzkrieg with a repeat of the Ryabkov ultimatum on NATO borders as of 1997, led to the rupture in relations with the West and literally forced the Kremlin into a position of subordination to China. So yes, Kremlin is a subordinate of China right now. Without China's support, Russia could not wage this war at all. This war would have to be stopped right now, this moment, without Chinese support. The logistics, massive amount of logistics is carried by Chinese companies, Chinese production capabilities. They are enabling this war to go on. This means Russia is in subordination to China, because also China is supposed to be substitute for the massive European gas exports that don't happen anymore, although China is buying it with a massive discount. This is how it is. Russia is a vassal of China right now. However, it will now be impossible to restore relations with the West without worsening relations with China. Here we get to the balance of power and all of that Game of Thrones. The swing has swung very strongly, so it will fly past the equilibrium point in an instant. At the same time, Trump will happily exchange Ukraine for a break in relations between the Kremlin and China, since this will inevitably and finally lower Russia to subordination position to the West and the United States in the first place for many decades. Since Europe itself is doing increasingly poor, and therefore Putin will not be able to balance between Europe and the United States either. At the same time, Putin's endless stories that we were deceived in reality cover up a completely different picture. He himself destroyed all existing relations between Russia and three largest subjects of the world politics. We were deceived means he is an idiot at best, while he screwed everything up himself, means he is an unambiguous loser. Therefore, the Kremlin now has an extremely poor choice. Either continue today's absolutely hopeless in all respects special military operation, which simply cannot have any strategic task when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine relations, or go for agreements with the West, breaking off relations with China and remaining without any protection at all. There is no world where Putin can make peace and can get closer to the United States and Trump and the West without getting further away from China. Now, China doesn't like that. China likes their new vassal. They like the way they control Russia. They get cheap gas and oil from Russia. They get to export their military uniforms and food and even weapons to Russia. Suddenly, when Putin would, people project their fears and say this, Putin and Trump are now friends. There is no way they can get closer to each other without the power of balance shifting between Russia and China. And China doesn't like that. So for the Kremlin, there is no way to break free. If they do anything for Trump and take the deal, they're going to have an issue with China. If they don't, they're going to have an issue with the United States. Both versions for the Kremlin and for Putin are really bad. Putin doesn't have a good way out of this. And here is a third analysis that suggests why Putin might refuse Trump's deals, whatever they might be, outright. And this is also a possibility. Number one, Putin is still not secured all of Eastern Donetsk region, and if he can, it will take several more months and possibly into next year. Even if he captured it, there is no easy way to defend its regional border. There's no rivers, no high ground, so he'll likely want to advance into the neighboring Dnipropetrovsk region and create a deep buffer zone. Number two, in the south, Putin's objective was to create secure land route to occupied Crimea, but he has not captured all of Zaporizhia region. This means Ukrainian missiles and artillery can easily reach occupied ports of Mariupol and Berdyansk. Again, Putin will likely want to secure all of Zaporizhia region and then push into the Dnipropetrovsk region. There, the Dnipro and Samara rivers would create a more defensible position. Number three, in the Kherson region, things aren't good for Putin. Ukraine holds northern side of the Dnipro River, the regional capital Kherson, but Crimea is only 80 kilometers away, so well within a range of Ukrainian missiles and drones. To better defend Crimea, Putin may want to capture all of Kherson region and gain access to the Kherson city and its international airport. Number four, In short, from a strategic standpoint, the current situation isn't good for Russia. Putin knows he has momentum in the Donetsk region, but he is also losing vast amounts of men and material. These are losses he can't afford to keep on suffering for much longer. Putin also knows that Trump won't intervene militarily should Russian forces break any peace plan. Putin will simply use the tried and tested excuse of blaming Ukraine, simply carry out the invasion. So, right now, Russian armies are advancing, although very slowly, and it's very expensive for them in losses. Putin knows this. He sees, okay, we're advancing. He is obsessed with ground taken. He's obsessed with his political orders being fulfilled. Take this by this date, although it never works for him. So if Trump comes with any kind of deal, right now Putin has the feeling, okay, we're advancing right now. We gotta push this. We cannot stop now. We gotta hammer the iron until it's hot. So the timing is just off. Any kind of deal from Trump might not be very favorable for Putin right now, taking into account everything I just read to you also about leveraging, about being in the power balance of Russia, China, and the United States. Putin's options are very limited, plus Putin's personal fixation with the ground taken and occupying Ukraine doesn't help him at all. My friends, yesterday in the Russian state television, they aired nude photos of the future First Lady of the United States of America, Melania Trump, Trump's wife, and Russian state media aired these photos of her, nude photos of the First Lady of America. It's such a bizarre situation. I would never imagine my eyes would see this stuff. It's so weird world we're living in. But I don't know what to think of this. What do you think of this? I mean, Russia, whoever says whatever they say, I mean, this, to me, it seems like it's shots fired. It's a humiliation attempt towards Trump. Nothing airs in Russia without Putin's consent. So this is basically Putin humiliating Trump's wife. I don't know what to make of this. I don't know what Trump makes of this. I don't know if he cares about his wife or not. Maybe I'll learn all of that stuff in the comments. So just comment and I'll read it all and then I'll get a better idea of what this might mean. In my eyes, it means a humiliation. Donald Trump called Putin and told him not to escalate the war in Ukraine. According to the media, the conversation took place on November 7th. Trump also reminded Putin of Washington's sizable military presence in Europe and expressed an interest in follow-up conversations to discuss the resolution of the Ukraine war soon. Also, Putin said this immediately after it turned out that Trump won. Putin said that I don't think it's shameful for me to call Trump, but I don't do it because Western leaders are used to call me almost.
Руководители западных государств с какого этапа они чуть ли не каждую неделю мне звонили, а потом
almost weekly. So he says that they used to call him almost weekly, but it's not the case anymore because he played all of those cards. He threw away those cards. I mean, Putin had the West in his palm of his hand. He had the entirety of Europe and Germany addicted to the oil and gas. He threw it away. It's not like Europe woke up. Putin threw it away. They're not calling him weekly anymore. And then suddenly they stopped calling me. Well, why did they stop calling you, Mr. Putin? I don't know. Maybe something to do with not exporting gas to them anymore. Well, if they don't want to, they don't have to. We are, as you can see, alive and well. We develop and move forward. If any of them want to resume contacts, I always say, we have nothing against it. We will renew contacts and have discussions. So he's basically saying, I'm not going to call Trump first because he has to call me first, which is again setting the boundary and setting the balance. Thing is, people again say that, oh, Trump is Putin's puppet or friend or whatever. Whatever he might be, whatever his relationship to Putin, he has a massive ego. And massive ego people, they don't like to be trampled on. I'm not saying he's wrong or right or whatever is happening. I'm just saying that this kind of behavior will trigger a Trump's response. He doesn't like that. So him being very unpredictable means also that their so-called friendship might be very unpredictable and might end at any moment. For example, with Putin's rejection of Trump's deal All I'm saying is we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to play out for Ukraine. And there might be quite some things happening that nobody predicts. Now, my friends, we're going to touch upon Russian economy. I feel like I have to do this in every video now because Russian economy is now showing very strong signs of retracting, a very bad situation. They're doing the best to hide it, but now the signs are showing. And yeah, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but in the next 10 years, the situation is extremely bleak for the Russian economy as long as the sanctions continue. It seems that the Russian economy is headed towards collapse in 2025, and Putin knows this. While the Kremlin likes to pretend that their bloody war economy is doing better than ever, this is far from the truth. In attempts to stop runaway inflation due to increased defense spending, the Russian central bank has increased the interest rate to record high 21% and will very likely rise it again in December. So in the time of 1 month, another deadline coming for the Russian central bank. If they raise it even further, I mean, this is a clear sign that they're screwed. It is unclear whether they will be able to stop inflation this way. But this move is likely to bear devastating consequences for Russian businesses, already hurt by Western sanctions. Many are already reporting drastic increase in late payments from counterparties, a worrying sign for the economy. Financial experts are expecting a wave of bankruptcies to sweep the Russian market over the next several months, and many leading businesses have grim prognosis for 2025. Now, gotta say again, these economy threads are, let's be honest, they're boring. Because there's no explosions, there's no ground taken, there's no massive battles. But this is how wars are fought. Every war is a war of economies, because tanks are bought with money. They're built with money and wages to the guys who build them. Missiles are built with money. Economies make money. So if there is anything that hurts the economies, that is the deadliest weapon against that country. And sanctions against Russia, I mean, they're very good at hiding it, but they cannot do it forever. And interest rate is a perfect indicator how they're really doing. I mean, no country with their good mind would raise to 21% if they could do otherwise, because it makes the money so expensive. Nobody can expand by taking loans, and capitalist system needs to expand and grow by taking loans. It's just horrible for the economy. For example, Samolet Group, a major real estate developer in Russia, is also on the brink of collapse. By the way, this is one of the biggest Russian real estate developers. Their sales are down 37%. And one of the biggest shareholders is trying to sell his stake in the company. As a systemic company for the Russian economy, the default of Samolet would likely require a government bailout. Now, Russia and Putin, all of his funding is directing to the military. Now suddenly he will have these massive companies in Russia that need his bailout. Or they will go bankrupt, which will trigger another company's bankrupt because they're so big and they have this spider web going out from them. If they go down, a lot of companies go down and the entire economy goes down. Putin cannot allow that, although he doesn't like it. He has to bail them out, which means he has to divert from the military if these big companies begin to fail, and they will begin to fail next year. Russia's Union of Shopping Centers, for example, has appealed to the government for support. They are requesting subsidized interest rates of 7 to 10%, debt restructuring, and payment deferrals of 5 to 10 years. Payment deferrals of 5 to 10 years. This is how they see they can float. Russia's Union of Shopping Centers. I mean, this is massive. Asking from your government of not payment deferrals of 5 to 10 years. Of course, Putin is going to say no. If he's going to say yes, he's going to have to put a lot of money into that. Without these measures, 200 shopping centers risk bankruptcy. This is massive. Let's take another example. I mean, there are plenty of examples all over. I cannot go them one by one, but here is sales of real estate. Sales of apartments and new buildings have collapsed in Russia. If in Moscow and St. Petersburg the decline is relatively small, minus 48% in 1 year. I mean, relatively small, minus 48%. It's massive. And minus 55. Then in other cities, it's complete disaster. Voronezh, minus 76%. Samara, minus 79%. Krasnoyarsk, minus 82%. I mean, it's close to 100, which means zero sales in new apartments. Nobody's buying nothing anymore. This is big. This is massive. And finally, I would like to bring out the birth rate drop in Russia. Now, this is a bit different because the same thing is happening in Ukraine and also in my country, Estonia. All the Western nations, almost all, are struggling with the falling of the birth rates. Although Russia is having that issue on another level, their issue is bigger. Putin's crony bloggers are highlighting the catastrophic drop in birth rates in Russia. In 2014, almost 2 million babies were born. In 2023, that figure was nearly 700,000 lower, and it's dropping even further in 2024. But strangely, these clowns blame Deputy Prime Minister of Social Policy Galikova and some liberals for the failure of the demographic system. So, in Russia, the blaming system is copied from the Soviet Union. It's not the General Secretary or the leader of the CCCP who takes the claim. In this case, it's not the Tsar or the President Putin. It's always somebody else. In this case, it's the Deputy Prime Minister of Social Policy, Galikova. Well, in reality, it is all Putin. Everything happening in Russia is Putin. Right now, it has built this way. It has been built. But blaming him is to go to jail, so people are afraid to do that. They want to play the game of blaming whoever else they can blame and just put her or him to jail. In this way, nothing ever gets learned, nothing ever gets changed. Now, my friends, let's look at the NATO's and European reaction to this war in the last almost 3 years, and we see some interesting phenomena going on. Here are the 30 top spenders of NATO. We see number one is Poland, allocating to military 4.12% of their GDP. This is beautiful. This is correct. This is how it should be right now. This is one of the only correct reactions to the new geopolitical realities and balances of power shifting in Eastern Europe. Poland, way to go. It's fantastic. Second is Estonia, my country. Wonderful. Third is the United States. And I know United States putting you guys third, although you spend almost $1 trillion in defense or offense in your case, not fair. But we're only looking at the GDPs because for our countries, this represents for every person how much they have to pay every month and every year to this, like, you know what I mean. So every country who spends over 3%, I have respect. This is a good reaction. This is correct. It is not NATO's 2% anymore. The new reality should be 3%, and everybody going under that they're living on the expense of other countries. This is how it is, and I have no respect to that. They have to pick up the slack. We have here Germany 2.12, Sweden 2.14, we have Norway 2.2, we have Romania 2.25, UK 2.33, Finland 2.41. I'm reading the countries who are spending even over 2%, which is the official requirement for NATO. I mean, we have Slovenia 1.29, we have Belgium 1.30, we have Italy 1.49, Portugal 1.55, Slovakia just hit 2%. Wake up, Western Europe. Wake up. It's time. Take the head out of the sand and look into your own fears, and they will disappear. Now we continue with the spending in Western Europe, and I want to bring out Poland again because they I want to give them credit for credit is due there. Relative to its GDP, Poland provided the most aid to Ukraine of any other country. Only military aid was provided in the amount of 3.23 billion euros. And if we look at the chart here, Poland number one and Estonia, of course, immediately after. We're always on top of that list. Any list you watch, military spending, percentage-wise, or support to Ukraine, we're on top of those lists. There's no illusions here. Russian border is 200 kilometers or 100 miles from where I'm physically located right now. We have no spare time. We have no early warning. We have nothing except what we do right now. We have nowhere to run to. Cannot put the head under the sand. We don't have the luxury of spending 1.5 or even 2.5. We're over 3. We're going to 4. From now on, we should all be dark pink. And look at this dark pink, what it means. 7 of the 23 EU countries that are also NATO members fall short of the military alliance target of 2%. We need to be 3+, better 4. And look, why is there a pattern in Europe that every country next to Russia is spending massively more on military than the countries in Southern Europe who are just reaping the benefits of not having aggressive neighbors? We are paying for the freedom of Central and Southern Europe. I don't think it's fair. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I agree with Trump's messaging here that Europe needs to wake up and spend more on its military, and they cannot take it for granted anymore. The security comes with a cost. they have to start paying it, because we are paying it right now. Now we will touch upon the subject of North Korean troops. And of course, Russia and North Korea signed a law of mutual defense treaty with North Korea. I mean, mutual defense, it's like promises to aid each other in case of war, where Russia is at war and North Korea is aiding. But it also means that if North Korea is at war and their only goal to be at war is with South Korea, then Russia would send weapons and troops to North Korea, which now officially means that Russia is an official enemy of South Korea. And knowing all the South Korean alliances, then Russia is an enemy of all of those countries also. Now, South Korea is not an enemy I would want to myself. So Putin is really, again, shooting himself in the foot, much like with the joining of Finland and Sweden into NATO. Now he has a new enemy and the allies of South Korea as the new enemies. Not good situation for him. Also about North Korean soldiers in Russia, how are they really like? What are they like? What is their morale? A Russian military blogger shared an account of interacting with North Korean soldiers in the Russian army, as relayed by a friend. According to this account, the North Korean soldiers are motivated soldiers who came voluntarily and are eager to learn. However, they are of little practical use. They struggle to distinguish Russians from Ukrainians, and orders have to be translated for them through a digital translator. The blogger claims it's hard to imagine them being deployed in offensive operations at this stage, perhaps only in defense, and even that is questionable. I noticed we haven't had enough humor in this video, and I'm not about to change that right now. I mean, I would even laugh about this if this was a joke, but it's not. This is the reality. Teachers in Russia are making tinfoil hats to protect themselves from external NATO influence. And it gets better. Hey, it's already funny, but wait for it. The patriotic initiative, Helmet of the Fatherland, was meant to demonstrate the readiness for protection against NATO satellite radiation. Teachers completed the task and reported on their work with photos and videos. But wait, it gets better. It turned out that the absurd instruction was sent to the teachers by a Belarusian prankster. Look at that. Russian flags, 3 of them, and a Putin portrait, a portrait of the Tsar, and 3 teachers with tinfoil hats. These teachers will not be brainwashed by NATO satellites. No way. They are patient. Look at that. My God. And they're making them, putting Russian flags on top of them. Hey, when this war is over, there will be movies like Soviet Union was portrayed as the strong man in the movies, as the villains and as like the enemy all the time. Russians will be portrayed as these like very stupid people. Straight after the humor, I have to apologize, but we gotta put our feet back on the ground also, because it's not so rosy on the Ukrainian side of the front also, and I have to cover this. I cannot, because for speaking the truth, you guys need to know this. Ukraine is struggling to replace battlefield losses with conscription, barely hitting 2/3 of its target. Russia, meanwhile, is replacing its losses by recruitment with lucrative contracts, without needing to revert to mass mobilization. A senior Ukrainian military commander admits that there has been a collapse in morale in some of the worst sections of the front. A source in the general staff suggests that nearly 1/5 of the soldiers have gone AWOL from their positions. So there is a massive issue with morale in the Ukrainian army, because Russians are advancing, and all the election shenanigans in the United States made Ukraine feel very alienated. We could change that only in Europe already, without the United States. But there's no political will for that. And I feel ashamed for that as a European. We could change. I mean, morale is how soldiers fight. What they need for morale is the feeling that they're not alone. That can be done with sending weapons, sending I mean, there's enough of messages sent out. Every president is announcing new aid packets, but they are not reached on the front so much, because it takes time and Western countries are quite slow with logistics. We gotta speed that stuff up. This is our security, not Ukrainian security only. Now, my friends, I want to bring you Putin from 1996, so 3 years before he became a president, and it's almost eerie what he says. I read the subtitles. As sad or scary as it might sound, in my view, a short period of totalitarianism in our country is possible. But the danger, which we may begin to seek out, is not in the structures of law and order, in the police force, and not even in the army.
Или нужно видеть опасность не в органах правопорядка, не в органах безопасности, в милиции и не даже не в армии. Это опасность
The danger is in our own mentality, the mentality of our people.
в ментальности нашего народа.
Now bear in mind, this was Putin before he was president, this was Putin where he still spoke the truth, where he still, first years of his presidency, he made massive moves towards European Union and NATO really cooperating, there was a point even of him trying to get a membership of NATO, a very short point. Everything changed, of course, but this is way before all of that. We see here what Putin was like before corruption of money and power. The danger is in our own mentality, the mentality of our people.
Всем кажется, что если
We, the Russians, tend to believe, and I won't hide the fact that I am sometimes inclined to think this way.
не скрою, и мне иногда так кажется, что если навести твердый
We think that if somebody came along who could resurrect law and order with an iron fist, then we would all be better off.
то всем нам станет жить лучше, комфортнее и безопаснее. На самом деле,
In actuality, this better off would pass very quickly,
эта комфортность очень быстро пройдет, потому что эта жесткая рука,
because of this iron fist would begin to strangle us.
и мы это мгновенно
We will immediately feel the repercussions on ourselves and our family members. Only in a democratic system, where the executive arm of the law and order, whatever we might call them, the KGB or Ministry of Internal Affairs, NKVD, whatever,
только в условиях демократической системы, когда сотрудники правоохранительных органов, как бы мы их ни называли, КГБ, МВД, НКВД, как угодно, когда
only when they feel a sense of responsibility, where tomorrow or next year the new government of the day will ask them, how did you perform the laws of the former government of the country in which you live? This sentence for me is responsibility. It describes responsibility by a government and the country's leader. He says that only if there is a forced responsibility, you have to see your actions, you have to live by them.
завтра либо через год может произойти смена политического руководства в стране, в регионе или в городе, с них спросят, а как вы выполняли законы той страны, в которой вы живете? И что вы делали
How did you treat the citizens over which you had power?
в отношении которых?
It is almost eerie. This Putin, 1996, this guy who says this, I agree with him. Every word he says. He admits that sometimes he falls into the trap of the Russian imperialism, thinking that they need a strong man. He admits that all of Russia has that issue. He says that only democratic values and the division of power over like KGB and NKVD and the next government's questions and audit of their actions, only this you can have a strong country and a country that doesn't devour itself. He's saying this. I agreed to it. What changed? And now, my friends, after this massively long video, if you're still here, you're a legend. And now I will torture your ears with my Estonian pronunciation of some Buy Me a Coffee members. These are the foundation of this channel. They support the channel. Pierre Morin. Per Värmel, Hendrik Dalgaard, Mario Taupin, Putin is a wanker. Thank you to these 5 people. If you like the channel, buy me a coffee, link is in the description below. Until my next video, my friends, which will be on Wednesday, so be sure to be back. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.